The multi-spectrum camera is where I think we're really going to go in to try to manage landscapes that we build, like large landscapes that we build outside, land management, which could be orchards, it could be forest, it could be meadows, it could be, row crops, whatever we're using to manage the land.
Welcome, everybody, to the April installment of our Land and Wildlife Speaker Series. My name is Luke McCauley. I'm with University of Maryland Extension. I'm a wildlife management specialist. I do work on deer, I do work on bobwhite quail, and really I do work on broader habitat issues and trying to bring back wildlife across the landscape. I'm excited today to hear from Kirk Floyd. This is actually a picture of his son. It looked a lot like him. I thought it was an old picture of him from his younger days, but this is his son with the drone. He is the founder and owner of Kdrone Services. I first met Kirk probably 3 or 4 years ago now. He was working with other University of Maryland Extension folks and using his drones to put on cover crops. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that today, and I'm really excited about this. He's an entrepreneur. He started his own company in drone work and he's very knowledgeable, and he's going to help us out and learn a lot about the use of drones in land management today.
So, as Luke said, my name is Kirk Floyd, and I'm the owner and founder of Kdrone Services. I've been in the horticultural industry for about 37 years. I've been a certified arborist for 18 years, and I've been pretty much about 18 years remote piloting small aircraft, mainly RC aircraft. And then for the last 6 years or so, I've been flying professional drones. I've had 35 years as a pesticide applicator. Mainly that was ornamental and turf applications. So,
I didn't know you flew RC aircraft that long. It's a new. I
well,
knew you
that's
did a lot of water sports, but I didn't know you also did.
that was the thing. As a kid, I used to go to the little RC airport that was down on Goody Drive. I don't know if people remember that back then. There used to be a little runway down there, and we used to get my grandfather used to take me there, and I used to watch the guys fly the RC. Later on, when I guess, like I said, 18 years ago, they started making little RC electric helicopters that were acrobatic, and I saved a bunch of money up and I bought one, and then I wrecked it in the first day. So it was about $600. And I bought another one the next day. My wife was like, "What's up with that?" And I said, "I got parts for the other one, so I'm fine. We'll keep doing it." And I actually still have the second model is in my shop. It still flies. So it's kind of my second thing. And it really got me into working on the equipment. That's the one thing, working on the little servos and pieces and parts. And that really kind of got me into it. And then when drones came around, the spray drone, I started doing camera drones at first with the movies. Some friends of mine got me into that game with Netflix and some of the movie companies, Discovery around here. But I didn't really enjoy it. And I had such a horticultural background. The first time I actually saw a model of the one that's on the screen now, an earlier version of that DJI drone, I realized that day that this is what I was going to do for a living. So, so I just started gravitating towards it. So, and I'll talk a little bit at the end of what it takes to do it as far as the legality of the FAA, the MDA, and just licensing that's required to be able to do that job. So this is Dorothy. She's the second drone we've had. She has about 3,000 hours on her, so they're very durable. She's even had some tree strikes. And this is an 8-bladed copter. So you can really take one, maybe one and a half of these blades out, one on each this motor, and then a half on another, and it will still land by itself. Not a problem. So they're pretty durable in that way. This is a spreader system that I was using when I first did cover crop. We were doing daikon radishes and standing corn because the Maryland Department of Agriculture actually has a program that's a recovery for cover crop. If you sign up with the program, they'll pay you different rates for different types of cover crop put down different ways at different times of the year. And Ariel actually pays an extra $15 on the cover crop program. So we usually charge between $20 and $25 an acre to apply the seed. So the farmer pretty much recoups our cost and usually ends up recouping most of the seed cost and sometimes actually ends up with a little profit on top. That happens often. Last year was a good year. Seeds were cheap in the clover and the radish, and even the rye were pretty cheap. So some of the farmers did pretty well at doing that cover crop stuff. We've also done some stuff with actually with natural lands, spreading seed for habitat. And with this little drone, some of the very, very, very fine, small, expensive seed that they want to put down for quail habitat ends up being impossible to apply with a machine like this because you end up blowing out thousands of dollars worth of seed in a second. So what we came up with was a method that I actually used when I was putting insects out, where I had small insects that I had to put out in a bigger area. And what we did was we used vermiculite, or a forced rock kind of medium, and use that and mix the seeds or the insects with that medium so that we were able to get a consistent spread over a larger area and not blow all the seeds out in one swipe. So these little drones are really good for the meadow restoration kind of stuff on a small scale, and especially when you're using the really small seeds, because the drone you saw at the beginning of the program is much larger and doesn't have the capability of being as precise as this little. This is a under 55-pound aircraft. Do we have any questions?
We checking it. Let's see. I think we're still clear. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So this is my son again. So this is the same drone you saw in the field, in the farm field, and that was doing radishes on corn is what we were doing with that at that time. This is with a different tank on it. So the tank system on this is a DJI T50. It's basically the biggest drone that DJI is putting out right now. Its total takeoff weight can be up to 227 pounds. This one right now would be a little under that because it's about 90 pounds with the tank and the 10 gallons that's in the tank. It's able, this one only, at this point, only has two nozzles, the two on the back. So if you see the rear of it, that's to the right, those underneath the motors are two nozzles, and you see the hoses going down to them. Those nozzles are not orifice nozzles, they're actually spinners, so they're disc. And what that does, it's kind of a newer technology for us in the drone world, but I know that the ground units have been using them. It enables us to control the microns, the size of the water droplets, anytime we want to, even while the aircraft's in the air, by the speed of those discs. And that's been kind of a game changer for us because we can go really fine to get fine fine mist down, or we can go very coarse, especially if we have a wind condition where we don't want to drift out of our zone. I have now since then put another set of nozzles on the front of this drone, and now it gives it about a 6.5 gallon minute application rate. So it's able to stand over top of trees or anywhere where you wanted to put a large amount of material down at once. When it's in the farm field spraying, and this was doing beans, this was over on the Eastern Shore, we were doing fungicide on beans. We're doing 2 gallons an acre at this rate, and this drone is completing 5 acres in about 6.5 minutes port to port. Once it's in the air, the rotors actually push the nozzles out, the spray pattern out to about 32 feet when we're moving at 25 miles an hour, and that enables us to do an acre every 46 seconds with this aircraft when it comes to farm applications.
I did have a question jump up on the cover crop seeding. I want to back up here.
Sure, you're gonna talk a little
real quick. I saw B-Pen said it doesn't see your screen share. Is anybody else put in the chat if you can see the screen share? Is everybody able to see the screen? Okay. We have a couple questions. Well, I think we should be good, but let me know in the chat if anybody else is having that trouble. I had a quick question. We got already some things coming in the chat, but backing up on the cover crops, you mentioned you can spread seed. And you were spreading radish. I think when I first met you, that was one of the more viable seed types because the seeds are small and they're lighter in weight. And so you can spread more acres with the weight constraints. Is that still a consideration, or can you move into larger seeded cover crops? And maybe we can even back up a little bit for the audience who's not familiar with cover crops and just briefly describe, what are some of the benefits of doing this in the first place? Why do you get extra payments for putting it on aerially versus other methods?
Well, the cover crop, obviously, the benefit of cover crop in Maryland, especially with a no-till policy that we have, really helps our water quality out into the Chesapeake Bay because we don't have the erosion that we would have in the wintertime. By having the cover crop program, it incentivizes the landowners to put down the cover crop, to keep their valuable soil there. It also ends up being a habitat, obviously, for all kinds of different things. One of my guys actually grazes his Black Angus on the radishes, and they love it. And it's a great nutrient source for them. A lot of minerals and things are in it. It's a tap root. I don't know if you know radishes, but they can put a 6 foot tap root down in about 2 months if they have enough time. And that's an aerification and also leaves a humus in the soil or an organic matter in the soil. And then the top is kind of a nitrogen fixture, but not really as much as like clover or some of the other cover crops that help the soil. So, and there's a variety. I mean, guys are doing rye with clover, clover with radishes. And the reason why we did radishes, as Luke mentioned, was we had such a small drone, that little first one you saw, that drone in comparison can only hold 20 pounds in the hopper. So the radishes paid out at 16 or 13 pounds to the acre was the minimum you could put them down at. So we were able to get a good crop down and did some research on that, and we were able to get a lot done. Now, fast forward today, 5 years later, this drone can hold 110 pounds of seed. So over 5 times the amount in one mission and spread it, excuse me, just as fast. So if I want to do an acre, 50 pounds per acre, I can do 2 acres with this drone in about 4 minutes. That's how fast it is. It's blowing stuff out. I'll show out of the bottom, and it's moving at 25 miles an hour. And so from the port to port, it's about 4 minutes. It takes off, dumps the whole thing out, comes back. We put another 2 bags of seed in it and go back and do it again. It's a labor intensive process, but the drone does it very efficiently. And when I first started doing it, I didn't think this would be invented this quick to have a drone this size at 224 pounds or 227. And now with that ability, this really changed our business as far as liquids and dry material being put out there. What was the other question, Luke?
Awesome. Oh, I think the issue of, did you cover the benefits of putting it on aerially and why
So the
that?
aerial benefits is that for a couple things is that when the cover crop, especially on corn, when we do it on corn, and beans are somewhat, but you got to be careful because of fodder. So if you have a crop that's going to grow quick like radishes, you have to time it right in the beans. The fodder could come up. You could do rye and stuff because it'll take longer for them to germinate at the end. And when your draper head goes over it, you're going to suck a lot of stuff up. And that's some guys don't want to do that. With the corn, it's a different because the head's a lot higher. The radishes are fine. When we do it in corn, by the time they
And when you
harvest the
you
corn,
said
and
flodder, is that what the word you used?
yeah,
So like that's when the cover crop grows up too much and gets
that's
in.
just too much. That's the junk that's in that goes into the combine that's not usable. Like the stuff that comes out the back of the combine, right?
Right.
But if you've got screens, it's a trommel in there and you got screens going back and forth. And if you get too much organic matter in there, that's why they let the beans dry so dry before they harvest because they just want to have the product to deal with. Same with corn too. Same, you don't want to have wet leaves unless you're grinding for silage, then you would do that. So the cover crops, so they give them the $15 extra. The cool thing is so when the farmers go in, and I do have a picture coming up at the end when we talk a little more another part of cover crop, the radishes are there. They harvest. It doesn't destroy the radishes. They're already grown. They're underneath the corn before they do it. So the cover crop is already established in the warmer months of September and October instead of waiting to harvest the corn and then put the cover crop down. And in some seasons where we don't get the right conditions, the cover crop doesn't really come in until the spring because we didn't get, we went to winter too quick or it was dry. So this way the corn protects the cover crop, lets it grow, and it's already established by the time the farmer doesn't, and at the end he doesn't do anything. The corn's done. He walks away from the field at that point and works on other fields where he might be using ground applications for other reasons, for different cover crops, like sowing them in with a seed drill. So
Right.
because we're just throwing it down the ground, so we're not sowing it in like a seed drill was. But there's a lot of seeds that are very successful with that type of application.
Great. Anthony Antonucci asked, he said, if you're applying pesticides with a drone, are you required to have a pesticide applicator's license?
Yes.
And
Yeah, we will. Yeah. So we are definitely, and I'll go through the regulations at the end because I kind of have them stacked up. So I had to print it out. So you are correct. It's a 13 in Maryland is the aerial applicator license. I don't know why they picked the number 13 to be the aerial. It's kind of weird, superstitious thing, but it's the aerial applicator's license. I got mine through, it's kind of weird. Maryland's been better about it now. Originally, it was a problem with having experience, but there's not a lot of guys to get experience with as you would do with other pesticides. So Kelly's been pretty good about letting people through if they have the right training, the licensing, the 137, which we'll talk about in a little bit, the agricultural license you need by the FAA to be able to spray economic poisons and fertilize and all that stuff. So well, I'll answer that question for sure because I have it in deep that tells exactly what is required and why it's required and what's not required. Because there are some interesting things the FAA has done that's good and bad as far. I'm gonna go to the next slide real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is the little drone. So this is kind of showing you, and I love it because it's stopped here. You really see how this is the little machine, and we are spraying Douglas fir trees here for needle cast. Actually, these aren't Douglas fir, sorry, these are spruces, white spruces, but there's other Douglases up at the top. I do this field in the morning because I need to have, if I want to do it this way at this height, which is kind of high for spraying, I have to have almost no wind and not inversion. So as you can see, I waited for the inversion to go away so it wasn't too humid. And this is the application, and I'll turn it on so you can kind of see what's going on. But look at the conal nozzles, and you'll see what the rotors are doing as far as blasting it down over the plants. So this is the kind of spray patterns we get. It's down, it's kind of mushrooms. We don't have a lot of top problems with drift with it, especially when we're lower to the ground. But in that situation, it was about covering 2 rows with one application. So that's the little drone. So here's the big drone. And sorry, it's a cell phone video. This is actually on the Eastern Shore. This is at our friend's house. And there's 110 pounds of wheat in the hopper, and this is for a food plot. So we're actually putting this down on the beans, and they said they actually got the beans picked up before the wheat started growing. So it was fine. Wasn't a problem with it. So to give you an idea, so this is full weight taking off. They're pretty agile. The over-under propeller system actually makes it have a little more lift than having 8 in a row like the other one does. And then the next video, I'll show you it actually spreading the seed. That's it going out to the field. Just kind of give you an idea how fast it can get out there in the field. So the missions are not a long time, and then it's setting up right now to start flying, and then it's fine. So it's gonna find its stop point by itself. All these operations are autonomous. They're done by making maps different ways with little drones, map it, photogrammetry, and I'll explain that in a minute. Or I could walk the field, or I could fly the field, or I could use a map like Google Earth and kind of buffer in a little bit from the edges and not worry about the tree lines as much. So there's a lot of different options for us to do it, but it is autonomous. We are not flying the aircraft, and that keeps it so that it covers the whole field perfectly every time. And it also corners on the corners. We don't go out of the field. You'll see it here. I think it's coming back on this one, but on the other one, it's going down to that tree line, and then it's turning around before the tree line. But so unlike a regular aircraft or helicopter, it does not have to leave the field. It can slow down and turn around. So here's it coming at us, and it's seeding right now. I don't think we're set up for audio. You can hear it flying. So sometimes when we're seeding, we could be 30 feet in the air. It's a safety thing. It just is easier to stay away from stuff. And the seed actually ends up flying out further on both sides of the aircraft. So I'm gonna get one more, and then I can answer a question. So before I get to this next one, is there any more questions about that came up?
Yeah, I think we had a couple more. Anthony asked again, he said, are there restrictions on the types of seed you can apply or broadcast? Are there any pesticide coating issues or non-pesticide coatings that you need to worry about? Or could seed dust be an issue for pollinators? And I have a thought on this, but you might.
I'd like to hear your take, because I really couldn't answer the thing about the pollinators and seed dust as far as what, I'm not familiar with that being a problem for pollinators. So maybe you have some insight on that.
Yeah, I know that a lot of the seeds, well, it reminded me, your question, Anthony, was good. It reminded me, we're going to have somebody in August speak about entomology and agriculture and pest management and farming, and how to do as wildlife friendly farming as possible. But one of the seed components are neonicotinoids, and I believe those go systemic into the plant.
Correct.
And so I believe I'm not aware. I believe it's very targeted into the seed itself. I am not aware of anything of that dust getting out. So,
I've never heard of that either, but I have worked a lot with, back in the bee days, I did a lot of midicloprid. I dealt with the problems with that with lindens and stuff like that with people that were doing applications and killing bees. And so I'm very aware of neonicotinoids and the bee problem, and especially in trees and grasses, but I've never heard of the dust being a problem
mhm.
from that. That's a great question. That's a great question. As far as the other parts of seed, as long as the seed is fine, I mean that's kind of rare. I've never put any coated seed down. No, I can't say that. I have in farm fields, but I think the coating was phosphorus because I used to put phosphorus coated grass seed down when the phosphorus, that's the way to do it. I mean, you want the phosphorus for germination and seeds, but you don't want it to go in the bay. The real way to do it is impregnated seed with phosphorus. It's probably the best way to do it without having as much bay effect on the plants. And there's really no regulations in Maryland on that on phosphorus on impregnated seed or seed with
Interesting.
coatings. But yeah, the seed we most of the seed that we put down, like when we did the wildflower stuff, that's kind of been like different seeds I've never used before. But most of the seeds that we use are regular cover crop seeds that have been put down for probably hundreds of years. I don't know how long they've been doing cover crops. So the wheats, the rye, some legumes, some bigger seed, but mostly just the radishes and the clover are the main things that people want because of the benefits. So the rye and the other things are pretty much cover crops. They don't really get nearly the benefits that some of them do, unless it's a wildlife benefit for something that's going to graze.
Yeah, are you going to get to the wildlife benefits of some of these cover crops in a little bit, or should we talk about that a bit?
We can talk about that now. I mean that's we can go right now. I'm going to talk about other imaging that would have an effect on. We'll go right now. We're going to go out of the treatment like that. We'll go into the imaging, kind of show you some of my imaging, the RGB, the multispectrum, on how to look at the health of meadows and things like that with drones and how that's going to be in the future, how we're going to use those. But we can talk about the wildlife because that's the main thing we want to know about. So
Yeah. You want to do it now or
yeah.
later? So let's talk a little bit about, yes, so when I hear about cover crops, I think there are a variety of seeds that are approved, and Bill Phillips, he's a colleague of mine, he put into the Q&A, and I'm going to drop it into the chat. And my apologies, the chat wasn't enabled. Now it works, so you should be able to use the chat. I'm going to drop that back into chat for everybody, but he has the cover crop program link there. There are a variety of seeds that you can use, and selection of seeds can be really important for things that you might improve a wildlife habitat with. And and generally I look at these as an opportunity to get not only improvements for the water quality in the bay, but also a food plot for wildlife over the winter. Once a field is harvested, there's relatively little left for wildlife on the landscape. But by putting a cover crop in, and you can provide forage for deer, you can provide forage for geese. Those are two species that I know a lot of people might be thinking about in terms of trying to provide food resources for those game species. And there's also other things that benefit too, just from having something green growing on the landscape rather than a kind of a barren field over the whole winter. So I have some thoughts on, and I know you've planted some for geese, but for deer, I have come around to really liking a combination of. We put together a mix of clover, winter pea, and you can use different types of clover, but clover, a winter pea, and I think you need to have at least 50% of cereal grain in the mix. So you can have legumes and grains. And so we used winter wheat, and that seemed to be a great mix for deer. They really like both clover and winter pea. I think of all the things I've planted, besides soybeans, I think winter pea is probably one of the highest rated species that deer love. And so adding that into your mix with a clover, those forbs provide a lot of protein. And then the winter wheat also is pretty palatable when it's first growing in those early stages over the winter. So I think that's a great deer food plot mix that you can put down as a cover crop program and get funding for that, but also be feeding those deer if you're interested in that aspect. I know a lot of people actually are trying to reduce deer density. So in that case, maybe you plant a grass like rye is not going to provide a lot of forage. The deer will eat it, but it's not as palatable and nutritious for them. And then geese. Do you want to talk about your goose seeding project?
I mean, you know more about exactly what we were doing there than I do. So,
Well, yeah, so you can also geese love winter wheat. They migrate
oh,
down
you,
here. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, the winter wheat mix for as you can put down as part of a cover crop program. It's going to be great forage for our migrating geese. I believe the goose populations have kind of taken a downward swing. I think they had a poor nesting season a couple years ago, so I think they're dropping the hunting. I think they're planning to reduce the hunting bag limit down to one. I heard. I'm not sure if that's finalized yet, but I think there's some talk about that. But providing forage for them in the winter time when they come down from Canada through seeding cover crops is a great way to attract them and just to feed them even if you're looking to hunt over them or not hunt. Those are both. It's a good cover crop cereal to put in that they will like. So
Yeah, and
uh,
he said it did. Hunter said it did really really well. They were really happy with the with the germination rate because they were worried about it. They'd never done it like the way I was going to do it. So they spent some money on it, but they were really happy with the results at the end from what I
right.
understand. So that's
Right. And so one of the challenges with getting wildlife food plots in is, yeah, like a hunter, you're going to get benefits by putting some of those cover crops in earlier than maybe a traditional or conventional farmer might want to do it. And so by being able to fly it on and have another provider to be able to go do that in a targeted area where you'd like, I think was one of the benefits for them in that it got established in the fall and was able to grow up before it got too cold.
for sure. Yeah.
Whereas if you plant it too late, it barely starts to come up before it gets too cold and it won't grow anymore. So I think that was one of the real benefits of being able to fly it on before the harvest was complete.
Yeah, I think that's the main, as you were talking, that's the one of the main advantages of using a drone is to be able to not touch the ground, to be able to fly over top and sow through things. That was beans there. They were already pretty dry, as you saw in that video. They were yellow, they're pretty yellow at that point. And the they were worried about the timing, but we got it right. And that's you just have to know what you're doing. And then we didn't have a problem with it. But like you said, they had a better goose season. They were really happy with that. They were also happy with the erosion control they got out of having that, not at that point.
Right.
So all right, so we'll
Great.
we'll,
Thanks.
we'll go on. So this is another RGB is obviously a regular photo. So this is another aspect that drones I think bring to land management that really has not been used as much as it should be at this point, and that is the ability to do photo programmetry. So this is the ability to take a drone like you just saw on the last page, a small drone, fly a stitch like lawnmower pattern over top, back and forth over top of it and then be able to AI program, be able to stitch those together. So this is about 58-acre nursery in Adamstown, Maryland. And as you can see, it looks like one picture but it's actually about 1,000 pictures put together. And it's also measurable because it's a GPS and because it's also topographical. So here's zooming in a little more on the same picture. So in the same program, we're able to see the whole 58 acres at one time, and then we can zoom in on individual plant material and still keep the resolution because of the way it was shot. It was shot at about 160 feet in the air, and that gives us this kind of resolution on the ground and measurability. So this is a great thing for land management because this is basically a heat map of the same picture of the nursery, the entire nursery, and red is high and blue is low. And there's where the water's going, right? It's going from red to blue. So I think land management, when it comes to putting in different crops to manage erosion or to manage water flow or anything like that, this tool is really powerful because it's just a quick, just bam. I love the heat map. It's better than trying to read topo lines. It really is a powerful tool, and I don't think it's very utilized in land management right now at all. So I think that's going to be a game changer. I've worked with a couple of big land companies now that are interested and what they want to do. And there's another picture. This is not a picture. This is a 3D rendering, and this is not even that great a one. I can do better now than this. This is that same picture programming done, but now it's turned it into a 3D image that we can fly through and see perspective on. I know there's uses for this in land management. For landscaping, we do it for as-built drawings, all kinds of things like that. But the multi-spectrum camera is where I think we're really going to go in to try to manage landscapes that we build, like large landscapes that we build outside, land management, which could be orchards, it could be forest, it could be meadows, it could be row crops, whatever we're using to manage the land out there. This is a little Mavic 3 Enterprise. It is a DJI drone, and most of the drones I'm going to show you today are DJI, but at the end I'll tell you about what's coming in the future, I hope, for drones. This drone has 4 multi-spectrum cameras on it and 1 RGB camera. The big one's an RGB, the little ones are multi. It's near infrared, near infrared green near and red edge. It gets the blue from the RGB camera. It's kind of interesting how DJI did that to not have to have the other camera on board. What this drone will do is it measures near infrared bounce back from crops in the land. And we've been using satellites to do that for years, so the technology is not new, but this puts it into a high resolution when a satellite will give you an acre as one block of looking at a plant health care of something, and this will show one plant having a problem because we're lower to the ground, but using the same technology, the same AI to read the technology and interpret it into an index, which is NDVIA or other indexes, which is basically showing you by color the health of a plant. And here's an example of what a multi-spectrum NDVIA index looks like on a meadow system. So obviously we've got a river, a creek going through here. We've got different land here managed different ways. And actually in this picture, the red is actually the healthy plants and the blue is actually the less healthy plants. And it's in an index from 0 to 1. And I won't go deep into multi-spectrum indexing, but what it gives us the ability to do is on a big overhead scale, see what plants are in stress and what plants are not in stress. It doesn't exactly all the time. We're working on learning more at University of Maryland right now. We're doing research at Y actually to learn more how to use this technology to actually understand why the problem is, why the plant's in stress. But what this does is give us the ability to narrow down the diagnosis from acres to square feet and be able to know where to go to look for the problem right now. Eventually, I think it'll tell us the problem, help solve it. But if you see on the bottom the scale, so basically a dead plant is basically anything 1, which is right where that blue line is, to negative. That's a dead plant. And anything like all the way up to 94 right there where that red is, that's as healthy as a plant can be, and anywhere in the index between it. So that's kind of what this is showing. You can write different indexes to show different problems. They still don't pinpoint exactly the problem, but you can do fertilization problems, nutrition problem, I mean, regular nutrition problems, water issues, insects, and obviously plant disease too could be another option too. So I think this is another tool that's going to be used in land management more and more and more. What do you think, Luke?
I think so. I mean, I think I've heard about targeted fertilizer applications. I mean, certainly water use. You could do targeted watering in
Well,
certain parts of fields, or we have
and
like,
invasives too.
yeah,
Invasive.
an
Same
invasive
thing.
species. Yeah, I'm curious. I look at this picture and I'm looking at this line right down the middle. What is along that line where it goes from red to blue? Are these different
So
days?
it's a different crop. So it's
Different crop?
probably it could have been that this was rounded up, and these are tall. These are probably taller plants. This was an example because I'm trying to look for a meadow. So all I have is like farm fields and stuff. So this kind of had diversity. So I thought it was kind of cool. Obviously, this is a waterway, but it looks like it's almost dead
Right.
because if you look at the index, is definitely red is good and blue is bad.
Okay.
So that's the dead part, the dead, and that's why you can see there's no index coming because it's all about the bounce back, but the water is going to show it is dead because it's because of the reflection from the near
Yeah.
infrared. It's different than what a plant reflects. So
Yeah.
that's and so would buildings. That's why you'd see buildings. That's why you can see this road. The road is dead too. You see the road's
Yeah.
blue too, and it's
Yeah.
showing the road as being dead too. And then this green in between is kind of in between. So it's probably kind of brown. If we look at it, kind of like what you see on the side here. See how you see where you can see, I wish I had a better picture with the green and back, but on the right side of the top where it cuts into the real RGB picture, you'll see kind of that it's probably a field that's been rounded up and there's a few weeds left in it, you know what I mean? Or it's
Gotcha.
getting ready
Yeah.
to be rounded up, probably is my guess on that. So,
All right, we got a couple of technical questions coming in here. Bill Phillips, he
yeah,
knows his stuff. Do you
yeah.
use RTK, PPK, or GCPs for your imagery? And if that makes sense to you, I think it probably makes sense to you, but could you explain it to our audience
Yeah,
who doesn't
so I
know
mean,
these acronyms?
so I don't in the imagery, so all of my drones are RTK with antennas and stuff. And when it comes to doing, I did construction stuff and I still do construction inspections and stuff like that. When comes to construction where you really want that centimeter accuracy because it's important, I think in the landscape Sometimes I don't use RTK. It takes time to set up and it's not as necessary for those as being perfect because it's probably still less than a foot off or less than a half a foot off from the real world. So it depends on what you're doing. If you're going to fly a drone autonomously, then yeah, you want an RTK map because you want to be centimeter accuracy. But if I'm making a map of mulch, I won't even a mulch map to measure. I won't even worry about. So the second thing would be using ground points, is what he said. So ground points are great.
Yeah, let's back up a little bit. So these RTK, PPK, and GCPs, these are ways in which you get increased accuracy of
Correct.
location of where you are on the map, right?
Correct.
And I know GCPs are ground control points, I believe.
Right. Right.
Do you know I don't know if you know the acronyms for RTK or
RTK, I
PPK.
can't remember what that but all RTK is an offset. So it actually takes the GNSS, the regular satellite imagery, I mean satellite signal, and by using ground things on the ground like cell towers and things like that, it actually offsets the GPS is off by about a meter or so. So it just takes it from a meter from being 3 feet, possibly if you have enough satellites, down to a centimeter accuracy. I still get measurements that are accurate though. What a ground point does, it lines up your map with the world,
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of,
So
and you can do
it could
that.
be shifted. The whole map could be slightly off
Just
by
off
a
by
foot
like a
or a few
foot.
feet or maybe a
Yeah,
few
like a
inches.
foot. And
And
it
so at
does
this
make a
level, you're able to
difference
line up your
when
map
you're doing
exactly onto that part of the
a
field.
very accurate measurement. It does make a
Gotcha.
difference. So that
Gotcha.
is a great question. A lot of times I've had great success with not toying with ground, because the problem with the ground position point is you can buy them. Some of the ones with GPS built in are very expensive. You need a really expensive GPS. So it adds a lot to the price of what you're doing. So if you're just a guy doing your own farm or something like that, and you wanted to use this technology to help it, I think it would be kind of an over expense in some ways, unless you really wanted like GIS mapping surveys of your property, kind of, that level. So I think that really you wouldn't need that, but you have to buy these really expensive ground points or a GPS to make a ground point. You have to let this GPS sit there for a while so that when you do the reconciliation in the software, what you do is you find the picture of the ground point.
Yep.
And then you
And you mark
tell
it.
the computer that that picture is at this elevation and at this latitude, longitude, and that's what rectifies the world with the picture.
Right. Right.
And you need
Yeah.
three of them to do it and be accurate. But when you're doing cut and fill, like if you're trying to cut out land and measure ditches, then the ground points really do come in handy. It makes it way more accurate than the other. So this picture right here, this is a LiDAR camera. This is a DJI product right now. These are expensive, obviously. I've used LiDAR cameras that cost over $70,000 in some research. This is a smaller condensed version on a 300. It's about a $15,000 drone and a $17,000 camera is what you're looking at there. So only like land companies are going to probably purchase this equipment, being $35,000 with the gear plus batteries and all the other fun stuff you got to buy to keep that thing. No licensing. So this is what LiDAR imaging looks like. It's a lot better in some ways. We're getting a lot more detail. We're also getting around detail because LiDAR is thousands of lasers going out, bouncing back. So they're able to penetrate through things. And the ability to penetrate through things, this is where I think land management could use LiDAR. You can take trees right off the land. And this is a game changer. This is in forestry, this is a game changer. What happens is when that drone is flying, it's shooting 1,000 lasers out, and some of them are actually penetrating the trees through the leaves and hitting the ground, not giving us as accurate, but ground topography we've never seen before underneath the tree. We can guess because of the elevation of the trees, but this is true that. So I think this is another forestry thing. So land management with forestry, with erosion control, drainage, things like that. This could be a something.
How deep into the ground? Like if there's leaves on the surface, does it penetrate through some of the leaves and the duck?
Not
Like,
really, no. So I mean, it's a laser, so it's not any better than the pointer you point at the screen,
I see.
But it's
So
just
it
lots
is.
of them in a puck lidar system, and what's the magic of it is that everything's moving and it's using really, really high-end IMUs, so instrument measuring equipment that actually when we go, it's all about the process of this because when you take the pictures, they're all over the place. But when it goes back in the computer and takes how the drone moved from the instrument and then takes the pictures, then it makes it stable.
Hmm.
So it's a huge stabilization situation. But it's how they measure bridges now. You can do it in this was probably a helicopter. This was probably not a drone. So you put LiDAR on helicopters. It's usually about 3 meters accuracy is your ground, per pixel. So it's not as high a resolution as you would with a drone or something like that.
Wow.
So, I want to make sure we have a couple times. So I will show you one thing real quick. This is a fun one, real fast. This is cover crop, and but cover crop from the drone itself. So this is a couple of years ago. This guy grows some amazing corn, and you'll see there's two varieties, so it looks like a lawn. We're in the beans on the corner. We have to set up, kind of out of the field, obviously, because we don't want to be in the corn. And the drone's going to take off. It's going to speed up to the first start point, but the start point is the trees that you see all the way in the end. So we'll have to cross over the bean field to get to the cornfield. So this is in September, and this is when we're doing cover crop. The government only gives us 22 days, I think it is this year, to get it all done, to get the aerial in. So we work every day, and we actually can fly at night now. So we can actually start doing it at night. We have a waiver now. So as you can see, there's different varieties. He does two different here. So we're all the way at the other end of the field. And so the drone right now, it's flying itself to the start point. It figured out where it left off. It's going to point out to the field. There's where you can see the varieties. And so we're doing this whole field with the little drone too. So this is 20 pounds of hopper and 1.6 acres of mission.
And you're spreading seed.
This is radishes. You can see it in the bottom, kind of. It might not come through on yours as well. At the other end,
I saw. Yeah,
you can start seeing it bouncing off the propellers. It's bouncing
a...
off the propellers and stuff sometimes too.
Right.
You see it popping up now. We're at the other end of the field now, and when it gets to the other end, it knows. Now the bigger drone has the ability automatically to do a circle around the field if I want, which is the way I do it now, so that I don't have to come up to the end like this. I kind of stay in the middle and around, and we had done the field before. So you see it didn't turn around. This one doesn't turn around. It just sideswiped and just went backwards. So now we're just going to fly backwards.
Yeah, I can see the seeds in the bottom flying out.
Yeah, now you see the seeds coming out because now we're going back. So you can see them. And this is our old setup with me on the ladder and my son getting ready to load the hopper. We used to use these little jugs, right? Because we were only doing 20 pounds. With the big drone, we just throw the bags in there now. It's just one bag at a time. Right. So we've gone a long way from this little setup here to having that big setup now. So pretty, do the next one. So this is what the radishes look like. This is one of my farm fields. This is 40 days after planting in October, probably about Halloween. And this is at 13. I think this is 15 pounds. I think we were up a little bit, but this is after the harvest. So this was all growing before the harvest. And then after the machines came in, it might have matted it down a little bit, but it comes right back up. So pretty cool stuff. So
yeah,
I'll take 5 minutes to get through the licensing, and then we can go through any questions that we have. So I have some time real quick. The first license you need to fly any drone commercially is a 107 drone license. And what that's an ability to commercially fly a drone, which means to fly for hire, and you'd say, well, then I can fly my drone at my property, or anything that furtherances your business. So if you were a private, I have to debate this with my aviation lawyer, because this is I just thought about it now. If you were a private applicator, you still have to have a licensing for the pesticides and all that stuff. I think no matter what, you'd still have to have a commercial license, even if you were flying drones on your own property to do the analytics and stuff. Now, I know for pesticides, you have to have a license, and we'll talk about that in a second. How you get this license is you
get real quick. If you're not business oriented, so if you're doing this entirely for, say you're doing it for wildlife, and this is just, you're not making money out of this, you want to improve your property for wildlife, could you do this without a license?
That is a very interesting question. And what I'll do is I'm going to put that to my lawyer, because that's a fun one for him. He'll figure it out for me. It's right on the gray area, because, and I'll say in a second why that is, because if you're doing that, if you start putting seed down or you start spraying pesticides, then you have to have the commercial license. And I'll show you why in a second.
Oh, okay.
So that's where it kind of shuts you down. You could do the multi-spectrum work. You could take pictures. You could do the mapping stuff, right? I think that might fall in that gray area where you'd be all right. So to take the 107, you go to an FAA testing center. Did you take yours?
Yeah.
You took yours, right? So you've got yours. So you go to a testing center, you take a test just like a regular pilot would in a controlled, operation facility. And then after that, you get your 107 license. And then After that, if you want to fly for spraying,
And briefly, let's talk just briefly about what that, like how hard that test is. And I found I was having a hard time sitting down and studying. And I do think you probably need to sit down and study. There's some questions on there that you will just not know about if you haven't studied some. In particular, knowing how to read an aviation chart. The maps
the
for
toughest part.
aviation are not
Well,
intuitive. Even if you're, I'm great. I like maps. I use maps a lot, but there are certain things you just have to know what the interpretation is for how to use them. So I think that's probably the biggest thing to study for. There's some other basics that are pretty intuitive, but it's good to do some. There's apps. Actually, I found a great app that goes through all the questions as well, and so you can kind of learn by taking test
there's a
questions.
lot of there's a lot of good resources out there to pass the test, but as Luke said, it's especially if you're not good at reading maps, and most people today don't read maps anymore, so it's a problem. It's not really taught anymore because of G. It really that's what hangs people up the most. But I will tell people, once you learn it, you're never going to use those maps again. Because it's an antiquated way of it's a low resolution aircraft map you're using, and we have great high resolution aviation maps on our phones now, but they don't let you use those because they're not FAA aviation maps. So once you get out of this, it's not like you're going to have to try to still figure out how to navigate with those maps. That's gone, you're done. That's the crazy thing. But once you get through the license, it's for life. You have to recertify yourself every 2 years, but it's an open book test in the recertification. It's online. They changed that a couple years ago. You used to have to go back and take the original test every 2 years, but then they decided, no, we'll just have, and it's mainly a continuing education test. It doesn't go through all the stuff you learned before. It goes through the new things that are out there and also gives you new abilities. Like one year that happened, and it gave us all the ability to fly at night. Not pesticides, but before we couldn't fly at night. And then all of a sudden you took the retest and it had some things about flying at night, and then everybody could fly at night. So it is awesome that you can do that. So this is where the FAA gets a little weird when it comes to agricultural operations, because it says, what is an agricultural operation? So under the 137, it's dispensing of any economic poison, right? So an economic poison is a substance that acts as a pesticide, plant regulator, or defoliant. So those are all fall into the 137 category. They consider chemicals used for disinfectants. This is the dumb one. This was about COVID and spraying stadiums. They had to put this in here because people were spraying stadiums with drones with with bleach in them. So they had to, so you do need a license to do that supposedly now, but nobody's doing that. Dispensing, this is a funny thing, is dispensing any other substance intended for plant nourishment, soil treatment, propagation of life, or pest control. So there includes everything you're going to do in the meadow, right? So it does require the 137. Anything that's affect agriculture, horticulture, or forest preservation, right? So there's another indication on what we do, that we need to have the 137 to do it. The funniest thing on this whole page is this last note here. And this is something that I've been playing with because I do this to dispense live insects. You do not need a 137 if you're dispensing live insects. And that includes biofungicides and things like that that are even not alive. My lawyer and I put that to the FAA to clarify that. And they say all bio products are included in this, even if they're insecticides or fungicides. So this is a cool thing for little growers and things that wanted to use insects, because if they stay under 55, they don't have to deal with this. They get the 107. They buy a little 55-pound drone, and they're throwing tryptogram of wasp and stuff like that, and mites and stuff all over their collard greens or whatever they want. So that's
Does
that's
this
kind of
include
cool.
dispensing seeds? So if you're seeding, I know I was looking at the fine print on that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
unclear to me whether seeds. It says directly
Propagation,
affecting
propagation.
propagation.
That's where they get you.
So you need a 137. So you need more than 107 to put out seed.
Yes. That's why cover crop is required. A 137 is required for cover crop. Yes.
And that's another level of testing.
For the airplanes. Yeah. So this is how you'll do the
There we go.
137. So you'll start out with some exemptions from the FAA, right? And these exemptions you can get two different ways. Okay. You can either go and cut, copy, and paste and try to find somebody else's on government regs, because this is all public records. It has to be. Some guys hide stuff you can, somewhat secrets and stuff. But that can be good and bad. If you can do that, you can pay somebody. I have a lawyer that doesn't charge that much money to do it. He's pretty cheap now. He's under $1,000 to do the whole process, and he files all the paperwork for you. He gives you the manuals for whatever drone you're going to do. He gives you an operational thing. When I first started with him, he charged me $3,000 to get my first license, and I had to write all the manuals myself in 2018. So Now it's a little different. It's a little easier. It's a lot easier now than it was. It took me 2 years to go through the process. You can do it now in about 6 months. So you'll break the exemptions are so you break rules. And I won't get into all that. It's kind of crazy, but you have to break some rules to take the test. You have to break some rules flying Part 191, which is part of manned aircraft stuff. And then after you get all those exemptions done, you'll contact the FAA. Sorry, well, contact the FAA and they'll tell you to administer a self-test. This is where it got crazy. There's no testing anymore. I had to take a test with the FAA. They don't have any testing anymore. You just tell them I went out and flew my drone and I think I'm good. And then you're fine. You're ready to go. Now, you still have to deal with the problem of getting a regulated pesticide license in Maryland, right?
Yeah.
So every state has its own regulations. So I have to apply to every state, even though I could fly a drone in any state as far as 137 goes, as far as the FAA goes, pesticide in every state is regulated by the state. And every state has a different regulation. And Maryland is 13, as I mentioned. So you have to deal with every state and deal with every regulation in every state. And then you have to apply, do continuing education, just like you were going to apply pesticides in any other way. Any
Real quick,
questions?
yeah, we
We've
got a
got
few
some
questions
questions. Go
here. I
what?
just answered one. Power lines. Is it 100 feet distance from power lines, either above or to the side?
I,
Maybe not.
it's
That's
interesting. The
towers. So
FAA
towers.
says
Towers are supposed to be 100 feet away, right?
yes, but they don't talk about power
They
lines
don't
right
talk
now.
about power lines.
So towers, yes, towers. You have to be a distance from towers. I don't, I don't think in spray drones. I fly really close to the wires. I do, and I don't think there's any real regulations with just regular power lines. I mean, maybe BG&E, maybe a local jurisdiction might have. And with arbor care, that's like 10 feet. You can't unless you're certified for rehab. You can't do that. You can't be close to the wires in 10 feet in any
Right.
tree operation. So I try to stay. DJI tells us how close we can get to high tension wires without it affecting our drone, which is about 15 feet. It's pretty close actually before they get affected by the RF. I try to stay away from power lines. The cool thing about these spray drones, like the one in the air you're seeing, is it can see power lines in the dark, quarter-inch power lines in the dark. On the bottom and the back, you see that little oil can thing, and you see a little hat that looks just like it on the top. Both of those are high-speed spinning microwave systems, and they're updating thousands of times a second, and it sees a quarter-inch cable like it's standing out, even in the dark. And then that one's got vision sensors on it too. And all of those are working together with an AI. The AI can actually operate that drone around pivots and power lines. I've flown in pivots in like Massey, and when I get to the pivot, the drone sees it and flies right over it, sprays right through it. Not a problem. It just sees it. So the technology is not a problem for us to be close to power lines. I've seen drones hit power lines. If you hit a power line, you're going to be responsible and you're going to have to report it to a bunch of people because you're going to do damage. And anything over $500 for the damage has to be reported to, for us, NASA, NTBS, FAA. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So we stay pretty far away from them because
Right.
we don't want to impact them. But I don't think there's any regulations really on spray drones and power lines about how close they can be to them. But
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I'm not going to say I'm not
Yeah.
wrong. So
Well, we have a ton of questions here,
Sure.
and we're already at 1 o'clock. We can go a little bit over, but
Okay,
how
sure,
about I'm gonna cherry pick a couple of questions out of here, and
sure.
one of the probably the biggest ones. If people want to get into this and they want to learn how to get a license, what are some of the recommendations you would have? Are there good YouTube channels you like? Are there good educational places? I know you have run drone camps yourself, but
We still do. We talked about that. We're not sure if we're going to run them twice a year or not. We do courses with the University of Maryland Extension at Central Maryland, which is over in Ellicott City. And we were doing a 4-day class in the summer and a 2-day class in the spring. We just finished the spring class about a month ago or so. And those, if we get more people involved, we just kind of we just kind of ran through a lot of the people that wanted to get involved right away, and our attendance went down. So we decided maybe we'll just do one a year. I don't know if we'll do the long summer class, so that's one option. So I'd stay in tune with extension because we will announce
Do
these.
you know
It'll
who
be on the
who the
website.
best do you know who the best contact is for that? I know I'm Googling it and I see the 2000
Hermenda might be kind of
Amanda.
taking it over. I mean, Stanton Gill was kind of the head, who
Yeah.
ran it for me before and before he passed. And now Hermenda, I think, is going to be involved in it. I think Andrew Rasafi is definitely, I think those two are going to spearhead it in the
Gotcha.
future for right
Gotcha.
now, I think, and
I
keep.
will put Hemendra's contact in the
Yeah.
link. It's got his email address for anybody who is interested in kind of staying abreast of this. I'm sure he'll have contact information. I'll put you in the
Yeah,
link.
we'll announce it on the website, on extension and all that, and make sure that
Yeah.
I want to do more. I just want if we can get more people involved in it, get more
Mhm.
classes.
Yeah.
We'd love to do that. We teach the mapping there. We teach flying drones for the people that have experience. We have bigger drones that can fly, more experienced drones, and for people that don't have any experience, have never flown a drone in their life, we will get you flying a drone with a pilot and learning how to do it, and a lot of information about how to get to it. We'll talk about spray drones, mapping, how to use the AI programs to use that multi-spectrum. Hermenda teaches that. He's very, very intelligent when it comes to that, and we're working on learning how to use that more and more in horticulture and agriculture for sure.
Yeah. Here's another question that came up that I wanted to hit. Bill, I think Bill Boyd asked. Thanks for the good question, Bill. Can multi-spectrum cameras eventually apply herbicides based on the mapping? Has it gotten there to drones? Can you do, targeted fertilizer or nitrogen applications based on what you're getting from the multi-spectrum? I know we have talked about,
It's
can this
great
drone
because
go
that's
into
what
a particular weed species? Can it go find an invasive species in the
yeah.
woods, target it and spray just that species?
We can do both. So I have a friend that can do it without the multi-spectrum as far as the weed stuff. He's worked with us. He's built an index with an AI himself that targeted palmer and beans, so green on green, which is hard to do with RGB. And he's using a regular RGB camera to do that. So that's possible for sure. But the good question you asked that because we are getting ready to really explore that exact item. The multi-spectrum there's two sets of software we're using, Pix4D and Terra. Pix4D is an American company, I think, and Terra is obviously DJI, so Chinese company. And we're right now, Hermenda and I at Y River, where Luke is, we're gonna use multi-spectrum to fly a wheat field to detect nutrient deficiency, and then that is going to teach the spray drone. It's going to write the program for the spray drone, and the spray drone's only going to spray where it needs to spray. Now this has all been done by some people, and the software companies and the drone companies say it'll do it, and we know it will, but I don't even know anybody that's physically actually done it. And so now we're going to be doing that in the next month or so. So that's exactly what it's going to. Prescription agriculture is what we're talking at that point. So we're able to take that with different indexes, and then we're able to kind of figure out how we want to block it down. And how we do it is we figure out whether we want to go by the square foot, by the meter, by whatever, and how much we want to condense it. And then we can pick like 5 points that we want to use. Like at this level, we want to do this fertilizer, and this level, we want to do this fertilizer. And then the AI puts it all together and then writes the spray map and blocks it together based on our parameters, and then writes a prescription map, and the drone follows it. So that is definitely what we're trying to do right now. And that's the future of all of this, is going to be that.
We had somebody raise their hand. This
Yeah,
is
I
a
see.
new system. Theodora, do you want to
Yeah.
go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question? While you do that, I'll see if I can find another question I know that was interesting. Do you have any recommendations? Do you think you could use drones to find livestock,
That's
particularly searching for emus or livestock guardian dogs?
100%. So I tell farmers that when I do the ag shows or the ag things, I always say, and last, man, you can just grab this and find your cow from your lawn chair. You don't have to go look for her. You know what I mean? The one that didn't come back. I said, just grab her out. The one farmer I know can chase her back with the drone.
Wow. Wow.
So
So,
that is
and are you
totally a
using just
thing.
regular RGB cameras? And at night,
Yeah,
I
or
think,
or even the
yeah,
FPV. That's even better. The FPV drones, you do
an
that with a
FPV for
goggle.
everybody is a first person view. So you can put Kirk loaned me, there's a VR, a virtual reality headset on, and it seems as though you're actually flying the drone. So it's like, it can make you a
It's
little
crazy.
dizzy, right?
Yeah, but you can see, but I could find, I mean, it flies 30 miles an hour. I could find a cow in 2 minutes, right? Just buzz the field or whatever. And they're also using infrareds for health of cows, for looking for heat. Because if you look at a herd of
Yeah.
cows with an infrared
Oh,
camera,
interesting.
the hot cow is sick, right? Because you can pretty
Yeah.
much with the mean temperature and the mean cow temperature, it's pretty easy to see the cow that has a problem. So they're actually, I hear that that's a new thing that they're actually trying to use it for
Right.
herd
Right.
for health of herds and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think one final use case I'll mention is the use of drones for quantifying deer numbers in an area. So you can fly at night with and cooler weather and use a thermal camera to find their heat signatures at night, so they stick out like a sore thumb in the open field. So we have used that. We had somebody speak on that last year who's really focused in on that. That's Stuart Green,
Yeah.
based out of, I think he's based out of New Jersey.
So last thing, I want to answer the question that was given to us before we started this, right? So we want to make sure we answer that question. I can't remember the guy the guy who asked that question. So here's the answer. Okay. The answer is right now in America,
Oh
we
yeah.
can't build drones in America. And the biggest problem with that is that we don't have any parts in America. And we'd have to, there are companies that are assembling drones in America using American servers, things like that. It kind of, it kind of moves the Chinese thing a little bit. That big drone you saw that before the tariffs came out, and that's obviously a problem now, there was a lot of customs issues, and that drone sit in customs for almost a month and a half. They didn't want to let it come in. And what it was is they were trying to use laws saying that there was a custody of materials, that maybe some of the materials in that drone came from a bad part of China. It was kind of, kind of political. I did get mine through. I can't get any new ones through. It's hard. My company now, a lot of them are hard to get. So we are now selling a new drone from a new country, and this is a Hungarian country, and this is actually their headquarters right here. ABZ drones that actually exist. It's in Hungary, and the best thing about this equipment is 100% not Chinese. There's no Chinese parts in it. And I didn't even think that was possible because basically the Chinese are the only ones that make the motors, the little pieces and parts that make these drones operate. This is what this drone looks like. This is the 30-liter model with a spreader. And if you notice, it looks a lot like the drone I have. It looks like a DJI. It's got the spreader systems very similar with the integrated, so it can fly underneath where the landing gear is. This drone has LiDAR systems on it. It actually is way better at avoiding trees and actually following tree rows in nurseries and things like this. The best thing about this is this drone is the same price as the DJI. So this 30-liter unit is about 30,000 bucks, and that's basically what we're paying for DJI equivalent. And the company that I sell drones for, Drone Nerds, actually, we just got 40 of these in stock, and they came through customs flying colors. No problems. So maybe this is our alternative, or at least our first, until some American company can figure out where they got the parts for this one, import them. But until we start building the little parts that make these drones in America, it's just like everything else. We're going to have to get parts elsewhere. But this is the Chinese alternative, is the question I was asked. This
Right.
is
Right.
it. And
Yeah.
this is where I'm
Clark asked
going.
the same
I'm going to be
question. Yeah.
selling these. 2 of these are going to Iowa tomorrow for my company. They're going to do 5,000 acres in May. That's what these guys in Iowa want to do with these. It's not a problem for 2 of these. They could do more than 5,000 acres in a month. And I'm interested to see how they hold up. That's the thing. Are they
Yeah.
durable enough?
Yeah.
Can they stand the test of time? But
Well,
this is
yeah, that's great. Thank you for covering so much. We're at 1:10 and I have another appointment to run too. So
perfect. No,
we
thank
have a
you guys
lot of
for
questions. I'm sorry for everybody who we didn't get to your questions. Some of them you will learn if you end up attending one of these drone schools, but there's a lot of other good stuff in there. Sorry we weren't able to get to them all,
it's a
but
lot.
we'll have to hit this up again, this topic. And thank you, Kirk, for joining us, and
No, thanks for
everybody
having me.
else, all the audience for joining us as well.
No, I appreciate it.
Look forward to seeing everybody next month when we cover forest management for wildlife with Chase Colstrom in Southern Maryland for NRCS. Everybody have a great day and great rest of your week. Thank you, Kirk, and I will
Yep.
talk to you all
Thank you.
soon. All
All
right, take
right. Take
care.
care.
All
Yep.
right, bye.
Bye bye.